Your doctrine. Communications, relationships, as it is.
Aye. Jah Rastafari. Greetings to one and all. I go by the name Jah Doctrine. And I present tonight on communication. Through the Father, I saw it as, it's just a word, right? But I saw it as something very important for us to figure out. Because in my experience now over the past 2 years, going on 3 years dealing with the house, I mean, if you had could level with me on this and just be straightforward. Check. Level with me straightforward. We have some communication challenges in communication. But this presentation is actually on effective communication as it relates to conflict resolution. We had a number of conflict resolution meetings over the past 2 years as well. Some more successful than others. So this is obviously something that we want to deal with and that we're going to need to deal with going forward more effectively. Quick question. Ben, the smart one. What's communication? Yeah. Okay, so you say communication, interaction. Anybody else got an opinion on what is communication? And before we go into effective communication and how to apply that to conflict resolution, we want to please figure out what we're dealing with, right? What is communication, then what is effective communication, then we can apply it, right? So, you say interacting. Okay, so I punched on me just now. Is that communication? As interacting? Good point. All right, cool. All right. So, cut a long story short, communication is the transfer of information from one to the next. We ain't going into a bunch of definitions. Europeans do that. They explain a bunch of things we already know. Not really important, right? We already know what communication is and all of these things. But what we want to identify is effective communication now. So when two people communicating like us right now, you have the sender, the receiver, you got some feedback, right? You got to decode the message, you got to figure out what the person's saying, right? The person got to send the message out, right? There's a lot of different things involved in this little simple thing that we call communication before we can figure out how to get the message out. Because each and every one of us that knows Rastafari, what we're here to do is spread a message to the world, right? We're here to communicate to the world. And we cannot do that effectively amongst ourselves without wanting to choke each other or all these other things. How we can do that to the world? What type of example we setting? You see what I'm saying? So leadership comes with a lot of responsibility. And an ineffective leadership will essentially lead to the destruction of what thou are trying to lead. Right? An effective leadership means that what you're trying to lead moves forward. So you could see past the little petty issues, right? You could see past personalities and all these individual things that when we go down studying metaphysics, right? Everyone that studies metaphysics, all of us is Rasta. We all know that this thing boils down to energy, right? Frequency, right? So when we get down to energy and frequency, all these little personality things that we're dealing with, in a lot of ways, they seem not to matter. But that's not actually true. Because we have to deal with them, pardon that, I'm moving too far. As an artist, I like to run across the stage. Alright, we like to deal with them. We like to deal with these, I lose my train of thought there, but cut a long story short, for us to move forward in the right leadership, we actually have to effectively communicate. And if we cannot move past these personality issues that we face with, that's when we're running into issues. Because we all have a personality, characteristics, opinions, beliefs, dislikes, beliefs, everything. And these are things that we could be stumbling on, right? Right? I mean, help me out there. I don't want to be up here by myself just talking to myself. Tell me what we stumbling on so I can put it in, so I can address it as I go through. What y'all see is our biggest issues this year, past 2 years, in communication? He's gonna have cooking issues, okay? See, too much intolerance, positive. Princesses and Benu still still, what you be watching TV or something? Okay. Little princess, how you doing? Everything good? Cool. I address it the youth then because I love the youth. And we doing this right here for the youth, you know what I mean? And they watching us, you see. So I saying, so as I move forward now, I'd like us to break into I think groups of 6. This could be quick, but I ain't gonna be too long. This ain't gonna be boring. You know what I mean? It was a lot of talking. So give thanks everybody. That's just a demonstration of exercise on communication, right? You know, everyone does the gossip one, right? Where you tell someone a secret and then the next person tells the next person. So we all been through these things before. These are essentially nothing new, but I do want to introduce something to you that's important for what we're here for. Good. So we have, in terms of communication, we have some things that's called non-verbal communication. Who could identify some non-verbal communication? Some examples of non-verbal communication between, let's get sign language. That's a good one. Anybody in their homes, when you just give somebody a certain look, a body posture, a certain movement, they know exactly what you mean? Anybody can express anything like that? Anybody? Yeah? Like something like when we stare at you, you know exactly what we mean? A non-verbal communication right there, right? Anybody ever hear someone suck your teeth at them? Cut their eye at them? All that is non-verbal communication. And all of those things impact our ability to get the message across effectively. Which is why we are at this point again. So, you know, like I said, for those who just coming up, what this presentation is about is effective communication as it applies to conflict resolution. And we have quite a number, like I said, of conflict resolution meetings over the past 2 years, some more effective than others. And some of the things that I'd like us to have at the tip of our tongues or our minds when we communicate is with things that affect communication, such as, is the message getting across the way I want it to? Am I saying the right words? Am I giving a certain attitude or a certain vibe that's being sent across that I may not realize? Right? Because we see a lot of that happening too. I'm saying yes, but I'm only saying no. Right? Anybody experience things like that? We reason it on something, the situation get a little fiery, right? And what will start happening is we see things like insincerity start creeping in. Because we may not necessarily be discussing things with the goal of getting the best result. We just want to win the argument. So, I guess we list off some of the things I want us to keep in mind as we communicate going forward this year. Some of the non-verbal things. We got vocal tone, pitch. You know, that's how loud you're talking. You know what I mean? We talk about them things. Facial expression, eye contact, verbal and non-verbal. We got those things as real important things to identify with non-verbal communication. So in terms of barriers to communication, any of the kids there, anybody can identify some of the things that slow us down in terms of getting effective communication across? Like background. I know when I first come to Naya Baby, one of the energies that I see us dealing with a lot is you been to school and I been to school. Anybody experience things like that? I mean, we gotta put it out there on the table if we can deal with it. You know what I mean? You speak clear to me, or you this and that, all these little different things that related to your background. You can't have these things. These are where you come from. But we may be trying to push the same goal, but we push it in a different way, and we run into conflict. Serious conflict too. Conflict that may lead to blows. And these are things that effective communication can bring, you can iron out. So, you know, Honorable Judge Jonathan, Honorable Judge Jonathan, pardon me everybody, my apologies. Honorable Judge Jonathan expressed something last night that I thought the eye was dread, and I don't know if you know how right on point you hit the nails, right? But you say purging, right? You say ones and ones need purging. And One of the things that I discovered in the research for this is there's something in Uganda called Mato Oput. It's a system of restorative justice. It's essentially what we discuss in one of our conflict resolution meetings. But it's actually something that's really ancient and organized and is led by the elders. But the key thing about this particular form of conflict resolution that's different from what we used to here in the West is responsibility. You see what I said? And Mato Oput actually means, because you say Persian, you say the man who got to drink the olive, drink the bitters. And Mato Oput actually means to drink from the bitter tree, my lord. See what I said? So nail on the head. See what I said? A lot of the times we have spiritual things we fight, but a physical cleanse can help us, right? They help flush out all of the things in our body and hold us back mentally. So the theme of this whole restorative justice process, and I want everybody to remember this phrase, restorative justice. The Western European what they be dealing with is this secretive thing. You go stand in front of the judge, you ain't really gotta look at the people who you do it to, you ain't gotta say nothing to them, they lock you up, that's that. You go in, you come out and everything, you know what I mean? There's no owning up for your responsibility. You pay a debt to society, but not to the people who you hurt. Right? And you don't even pay a debt to society because you get put away from society, don't do nothing for you in that sense, unless it's building you with education and ways of not just to sit there and suffer. See what I'm trying to say? So the European justice system, we know it's a setup. There's an African way that we always had, and we've been practicing it, is restorative justice. And I want us to have it at the tip of our tongues as we go forward this year and deal with these conflicts that we're dealing with. Mato Oput, drink of the bitter tree. I paraphrase it, but essentially been drinking at the bitter tree. Yes, sir. I could read it something, man, because this was so beautiful. And so I was just lying up with things. The I said, man, it was dread. There we go. It's I can pronounce it for the Mato Oput, drinking the bitter herb. So I'll read it. Certain things that are very important when you're dealing with it. It's a Acholi vernacular, meaning drinking the bitter herb of the oput tree. Because it ends in a significant ceremony of Mato Oput, where everybody, the two persons would be drinking of this tree in the calabash bowl. Right? It's not a happy ceremony. The mood of all present expresses the seriousness of the occasion. The process involves the guilty acknowledging responsibility, the guilty repenting, the guilty asking for forgiveness, the guilty paying compensation. None of that really just happened in the Western system. You just get locked up. The guilty being reconciled with the victim's family through sharing the bitter drink. And that's what Mato Oput really is what that phrase means. The bitter drink has no medical effect. I don't know, I have a feeling that it does. You know? Just through, and I know that's what bitters do. Every tree has something for you. I believe there's something was slipping there through the scholarly research, but I believe it wouldn't be drinking if it didn't have some religion effect, just like with the eye express. That was that. Okay. It only symbolizes the psychological bitterness that prevailed in the minds of the parties in conflict. It covers offenses across the board. Let me tell you how they're actually using this. And it's arguable whether it's effective with, like the NGO and the US government and all of this analyze how I can say if it's effective, but this is how they're using it. Soldiers that did egregious acts, raping, murder, in the continent where we're dealing with these serious things that in big numbers, right? These soldiers now get integrated back into the community, and there's a lot of wounds, you know what I mean? You killed my brother, you raped my sister. So now you want to talk, but you want to build your life back together. So this system, it was alleged that there was nothing working to fix the situation, nothing was working to bring peace, except when they start doing this ancient system. Remind them get to own up, pay. Actually, a big part of it is restitution. And that's actually owning up to what you did and paying. It may not be, in Africa, the European system is money. In our case, it might be skills, food. You know what I mean? But if we're in the Western system, it may turn out to be money. So I saying, but that's essentially a big chunk of it. And so the soldiers actually have to meet these parents, own up for what they did, genuinely feel that they want to make amends for their wrongdoing. And that's where the European like to critique it there. Because you know the European, how do you know it's genuine? You know what I mean? But the elders sitting in front of you know if that's genuine. Because you ain't doing this without a group of elders. With all of them there, you can double check things. You see what I said? So we have a system for dealing with these things. You know what I mean? Because you could have a lawyer that's ingenuine, a lot like they do, a lot of people are who innocent. So every system will have a flow where humans get to interact with it. You see what I'm trying to say? So I say let's go back to the ancient system that's been working for thousands and millions of years that we've been using. Cool. I can read one last little thing before I wrap up. Because there's also another expression of the things that we want to look for as we reason with one another in these conflict resolution situations. Because the conflict resolution may not be a big one where you're on the fort and there's 7 elders and everybody sitting down. It might just be me and a brethren and a sister and reasoning, and we run into conflict, and we have to now know how to move forward with sincerity, or we may have to go to somebody or elder. It may just be an elder there or something like that. It may not be a big community thing, but nonetheless, in our personal issues, we're dealing with our family at home, our sisters, our brethren, Rasta, non-Rasta, it don't matter. These things are actually effective. And I can read this here because I just like the way it's said here. The traditional Acholi culture, this is Uganda, views justice as a means of restoring social relations, not just punishment, right? Because that's what we grew up as punishment. In other words, justice in the traditional Acholi culture should be considered restorative. The wounds of war will be healed if the Acholi practice their traditional guiding principles. I think we can take out the wounds of war and put the wounds, because there's a lot of different wounds we're dealing with. He pointed out, the chief pointed out the following guiding principles. And I already said some earlier, right? But these are another few. Do not be a troublemaker. Respect. Sincerity. I think sincerity is a big one. A lot of times we just trying to win the argument. You know what I mean? Do not steal. Reconciliation and harmony and forgiveness. Yes, sir.
That's enough.
All right. Yeah. Right. Turn your chairs around and face forward. Spread it a little bit.
Aliyah, last year, Jah, Rastafari. Yeah, just saying, like, truly, to the future, right? So more time, like, all I them as adults, elders. I them basically they know right from wrong. Just people. And yes, decide to do what I need to do. You say, sometimes I need to step up. More time I need to pay attention to the youth, them, right? Be very impressionable, like spawn this name and truly. All the time I come to meetings and youth and they play it or having their own reason, like just now I say no reason. And I say what their reason on ain't important. But certain things, at least everything right here in your doctrine speak on these things with if we train up our children in the village within the mistakes that I ain't making, passing through, instead of passing through, you know what I mean? Through enough ego, enough things we go, we see, and we adopt, and trust up. Think of encouraging, we're still on the journey of encouraging these things of an angry progression. Saying, when the youth them, we could, whatever we say, we have a passion. even the child is known by the power is 20 grades level. Even the child is known by the lyrics. Whether the wig is pure or whether it be right. I just said that so we can just keep our children in line and observing what's happening in the inside school. This ain't like an American school and the teacher talking and the children thinking about the kind of things they see on TV. When they go to school, they sitting down, they listen to all the punishment or whatever. They listen to all kind of things. It's Bobby Brown foolishness, I call it. New Veterans Day, different or whatever they make. It's about the heights of Rastafari life. In general, you have to make sure you can get some short. You can let them watch the cartoon. They play a game. It's like a game. They play a cartoon. They play a game. Same book we reading, we watch the same book. So you can say the end was not, I guess, what reads it, the end was not, you can do it. Take that. Because we got to teach our children to be more this week. Passing the baton on to like Jack and Drew. Same. Is use them, so let's make sure. Even if they go to Bible and drink, they go to other people and things. Let's make sure that just keep in mind with everything that goes right. Even in the future, we have to protect them. We down this precious asset in mind, and never let them watch no cartoon. Of course, I'm going to take them to school. Aliyah, Selassie, Jah, Rastafari.
I give thanks for bringing it out about the instead. Appreciate the attention, appreciate the time instead. I can close off, but there's one thing that I want to say to the brethren again, that Jordan and the reason that you ask around and your reason that wants to figure out how best to present this. And one of the things again that I thought was really important is how we talk to one another. I supposed to be able to see the king and the queen. I just last see an empress man in each and every one of us, right? That's what we learned, right? So the item will talk to the queen, to the empress man. Now you ought to talk to the empress. You will talk to the king. Now you will talk to your brethren. Any of us? If the king was here, you talk to him like that? Real talk. Would you? Answer that within yourself. Because if you wouldn't, then you know the way we reason with each other ain't right. And it ain't gonna bring nothing progressive. I hear man say be burning fire and all of these type of things. It's dread, right? But you gotta do them things and recognize that you have respect. I can give this example. Princess Aliyah helped me learn this lesson. Right? They say your daughters are soft and you're still. I was doing homework with Aliyah, and she was having a little trouble with it, right? And I started getting frustrated. And I ain't gonna lie, I really thought she was faking. You know what I mean? Like, she just don't want to do her homework. Maybe just over and over. This is how she can. What's going on? You know what I mean? And then I noticed as I get more at it, she was tearing up. She didn't cry because I didn't get that serious, but nonetheless, she wanted to get it right so bad. You know what I mean? Because I just get it right. So I didn't feel bad. I said to myself, she ain't faking. That's just where she at. No matter how fiery I come with her, I gotta, like some send them, beat them, go in the room, get this way till you get it. They're gonna do all of that. None of that would have been effective. I actually would have destroyed our relationship without coming to me to do homework and feeling comfortable letting me know that she having trouble with something. So I say that to say, as we reason with our brothers and our sisters, sometimes you just gotta say something been true. I ain't say mince your words. Say something like you're talking to the king. And then let the king go sit on that. And the king will come back to you tomorrow with a clear conscience if he's sincere. Indeed, like those other things, with sincerity, not trying to be a troublemaker, all these other things, right? If they truly have them things in their heart, which is what we reason on and be waiting towards, they'll come back. But once you let this man and carry your mother, this and all of that, you need coming back to you to tell you was right. So far, I can leave on that note still. I give thanks for the time. And I appreciate the item love and you know what I mean, and heirs. That's the price.
My Lord. Reasoning of the heart.